Hey friends, I'm Jess Connolly. I'm an author, a coach, a Bible teacher, and a local church leader, and I love talking to real people who know what it means to have full lives, but also want to walk in abundance. This podcast is for you. It's not my podcast, it's ours. It's for people who crave lighthearted conversations and deeply spiritual truth. It's for people who are busy, tired, waiting, growing, dreaming, working, or praying about what's next. Wherever you're listening from, if it's quiet, mundane, or busy, I am praying for you, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Hey friends, today's episode is with Meredith Fletcher, my health coach, but we thought we should go ahead and give a quick disclaimer. The health and nutritional information that you're going to hear in this podcast is intended for educational purposes only. The author/communicator you're going to hear from, her information and opinions are based on years of research and clinical education, but they should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. You are advised to consult your own physician, your own practitioner for specific individual help concerning any health issue. And by all means, do your own research. In Jesus' name, let's go. There's nothing like health to make us feel defeated. There's nothing like health that also sometimes makes us feel shame about where we're at. Because our bodies are our bodies. They're the homes we live in here on earth. The enemy can often use our health to keep us from experiencing abundance, freedom, joy, and peace. So here is the good news. If you've ever wished that you had a gracious, gentle, loving, and wise health coach, I'm about to introduce you to mine. Meredith Fletcher is a health coach and an author of the book, The Good Food Solution. Working with her has been one of the best decisions our family has made, and I really think you're going to be so encouraged by her book, wherever you find yourself on a health journey. If you feel defeated and sick, this episode is for you. If you feel excited and love talking about all things health, this episode is for you. If you're not quite sure where to start, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Meredith,
hi.
Thanks so much for coming all the way here to Charleston.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh,
So excited.
It's such an honor. I wish you were here for a week because I would sit and ask you all the things. But first of all, congrats on your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
How did it feel? How was your publishing experience? I haven't gotten to ask you this.
Yeah, it was good. The team at Tyndale is where I published, and they are incredible. They are so incredible. And the whole process was great.
Have you always wanted to write a book? Did it just feel like a natural extension of the work you've been doing?
Yeah, both actually. So when I was a little girl, I would sit in my room and write chapters, like random chapters of like my cat went down the street, and I would just like,
I love it.
Fluff all these words in it. And went on to get a degree in English.
Yeah.
And then it's always just kind of been there, the desire for that. And then I never knew kind of what turn that would take until God has landed me in this health space, working with people and learning and researching. And that's literally what I do all day, every day.
Yeah.
And so that was a natural, wait a second, I can write all of this down as I'm able to share with one-on-one clients, but then put it all in one place, put it in a book.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited. Okay, saying that, tell me, how did you get into the health space?
Yeah, so I actually do talk a little bit about this in my book. I have always been, I will say sometime around in college, I became really fascinated with nutrients. I know it's kind of a weird way to start, but
I love it.
Interested in nutrients and interested in how they impact our bodies.
Yeah.
And meaning I'm the girl where I'm like, I want to know where everything comes from. I want to know the beginning. God created, an apple tree. Like, where's the seed? Like, go back and back and back and back, and I want to know how everything kind of started and flourished and evolved. And so when it came to nutrients and, being intrigued, essentially, I thought, we're eating these foods. Our body's doing something with them. our bodies are breaking them down somehow on a cellular level. And then our bodies are becoming those nutrients. And so I was like, wait, I gotta know more. So that's what kind of started it. But I also, in that same season, I was in my own emotional, mental, and spiritual journey in therapy. And I was really deep in therapy in the most beautiful, like God ordained healing way. And in that time, I had a friend suggest, she was like, hey, you should also go see my nutritionist. And so I was like, what? And I was doing some things at that time in regards to food and in regards to nutrients. Like I wasn't taking care of my body. I didn't even realize that I wasn't, but I was fine, like skipping meals and wondering, why am I tired? I was fine, like eating stuff that wasn't nourishing and being like, I cannot wake up for these journal prompts and stuff that my therapist would say, like, hey, we need to work on this. And I'm like, I had no idea. And so when I started going to my nutritionist, and I just was like, I don't know all the ins and outs or how this is going to end, but I'm going to be faithful and do what you say.
Yeah.
And I did. And what I noticed was that my body began to feel the impacts of my therapeutic journey.
Wow.
And so I was like, my gosh, what is this? So there is something to the fact that nutrients go into our body and make us who we are. So that's kind of what started it. I immediately went back to nutrition school and eventually went on to also get a master's in counseling and a master's in theology. And that's what I've given myself to from day one. That was over a decade ago. And now I research all of it and how to put the mind and the body together, how to connect things on different parts of the path of healing. And so that's kind of how it started with my own personal impact.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up question? Because what I feel like I heard you say, and I want you to correct me if the way I'm saying it is too simple, that your health, and I think for a lot of people, this might be like, duh, but I think for a lot of us, we might need to like hear this underline, that the way you approached your physical health changed the way you experienced mental health healing.
100%.
Wow.
100%.
Yeah.
The biggest thing was, because if you can identify, or if anyone that's listening can identify with having this longing to be on this journey with God, that you're on this like spiritual path of, hey, what's going on? Like, what do you have? What are you doing? You can't know more about God and his path for you and over your life and have that knowledge without spending time with him, without praying, without having that daily communion. What I learned in that time, because that was a huge part of my therapeutic process as well, my mental therapy journey. My counselor was a Christian counselor. And so we integrated it, and it was all just so beautiful and what I was seeking in that time. But I was like, I cannot get up, I can't do this, or I can't stay up late. I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was, whenever we're on any kind of healing journey, it can be draining. That in and of itself is what it is, even if you are feeling your body the best way possible, but put in the fact that I wasn't feeling my body. It's like, well, no wonder I'm not going to show up. So I was doing myself a disservice to show up to understand God more.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I first realized that,
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, I want to do something interesting about the book because I really want people to read the book. So I don't even necessarily want to get into what's inside of it. But I have noticed when looking at your book that I think one of my favorite things about it is the subtitle. And as an author and as a words girl, I know how much goes into a subtitle. So I was wondering if I could take you phrase by phrase through the subtitle and let you just go for like 2 to 3 minutes on each phrase. Yeah. The subtitle to The Good Food Solution is A Shame-Free Nutritional Journey to Food Freedom. I'm actually saying the bullet points. Let me read the real subtitle. A shame-free nutritional journey to food freedom, spiritual nourishment, and whole body health. So I want you to start with shame-free, but even before I let you talk about like a shame-free approach to health, I just want to confirm you really do have a shame-free approach to health. And I feel that from working with you. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but Nick and I both started working with you in like the fall of 2023, right? But for us, like the wheels fell off our life. And for Nick, especially with his mental health like trial, there was a lot of health stuff he immediately kind of dug into. I feel like if I can just start here, and again, we'll get into this later, but as a support person, and then as kind of like a support person in the midst of my family going through grief and then going through my own grief and trauma, for me, my health was like, I'm out. I don't know, man. Like, what's a supplement? Who's a supplement? You know what I'm saying? Like, I did a lot of great testing with you, and then I basically just had to survive. So all that being said, every single time I've reached out to you or talked to you, I have felt so at peace and at home and loved and seen by you. I want you to talk about what shame-free means to you in this nutritional journey, but I just want to confirm you really lived that out well.
As far as what it means to me, I think health in every word, in every aspect, in every feeling, in every understanding, it's complicated. It doesn't have to be, and it's not always complicated. But I feel like for someone on a journey to figure out what their body needs, where they're at, everybody's coming from a different spot. And I think that it's so ingrained in us based on how the food system is, and, you know, you get into all of that food system and approach and fad diets and this pill and that pill and this promise and that promise. And every client that I've ever worked with, no one is coming from a place of like, I don't want to do it. Like, I do want to do this.
Yeah.
I just don't know how. And it's like, great. You don't know how. You don't know what you don't know. And there is absolutely no room and no reason to feel bad for that. And I've had clients who they'll reach out and they're like, I fall off the wagon and fall on, or I'm going to get back on, or I fall off and get back on. And my perspective is I understand that language, and I understand where a person is coming from when they use that language and say, you know, I've fallen off, I've fallen back on. But to me, I don't align with that. And the reason is because that has a sense of vulnerability to shame.
Yeah.
And I think you can be on and off in different ways, and not every season is the time and place to take a million supplements. Like what you were saying, like this year, the way that you took control of the health of your life and your family for your priorities, they didn't involve like a huge, long, intense protocol, because that's not what you had the bandwidth for.
Yeah.
And that's okay. As with all clients. So it's like, there's no reason to say, hey, I went all in and or whatever the case is for any client, and realized I fell off. I'm like, you didn't fall off. Something else took priority. That's where it is, you know? And so that's where like my heart in is, if I'm going to like, you know, wave a stick and be like, you should have done this and you should have done that. Like, how is that inviting? That's no kind of invitation to deeper healing. That's just
so good.
So that's kind of the heart.
Thank you, God. Okay. So we didn't fall off the health wagon. We had to, and I say we, meaning me and maybe anyone who's listening, but we had to realign our priorities for a season, and now we can realign them in a different way if we have the margin.
Yeah. But do you see how kind of you're kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But the way that you choose to communicate it to yourself is a lot more freeing, right?
Well, and I would say, like, to me, when I'm coaching people, if I'm life coaching them in goals, what Nick and I will always tell people is, if you have more than 2 or 3 priorities, you have none. If you have more than 2 or 3 priorities, you have none. Like, you can't have 5 huge priorities in your life. You can't have 10 huge priorities. You can have 2 or 3 priorities in your life. And I always use, like, for example, like one that I like take off and put back on is like friendship for me. Like, I've been in a season of my life where like I haven't had to make friendship like a massive priority. I have great women on my team that I see. I have great community in our church, but I haven't had to like necessarily make it a priority. Then I would say after this last year, I felt so loved and supported. I'm like, hold on, I need to make this a priority again, because I want to love and support people the way they've loved and supported me. And I would say same for health. Like, the last year, my priority couldn't necessarily be healing. It had to be, honestly, had to be surviving, you know?
That's okay.
And I think like, I don't know. Anyways, I'm encouraged I like that. I like the priority language. Okay. Talk to me about the phrase nutritional journey.
Yeah. Okay.
That feels so intentional and I want to hear more.
Yeah, this could go a million different ways. So that is part of the reason that it's phrased like that. Nutritional journey looks so different from everyone based on like how God created your body.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I believe. That's how I approach clients in my practice. You know, I was telling Liz last night, like I have seen hundreds of clients in the past like several years, and no two protocols have ever been the same.
Yeah.
Because no two bodies are the same. Are they similar? And is there overlap? There can be, absolutely. Because there are things that people deal with that can be supported across the board. But like when you're getting down to like a very, very intentional, hey, we're getting in the weeds together, it just looks different because God made your body different than he made my body. And so that nutritional journey, sometimes it looks like healing. Sometimes it looks like a parasite cleanse. Sometimes it looks like, you know, getting rid of candida. Sometimes it looks like, so that nutritional journey is going to take time, and it's going to take whatever that looks like for people. Also, some people are coming and they're like, hey, I don't even know what a carb is.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, our nutritional journey together is to learn about the foods God created from the ground and how they fuel your body, you know? And so that looks different for everyone.
I like it. It looks different for everybody. Okay. Shame-free nutritional journey to food freedom.
Yes.
Say more.
Yes. I am, oh my gosh, I could hang out here for a very long time. Food, there's one thing that God created for us as humans to fuel our bodies. And I think this was like one of the very first things that we ever talked about last year. And it's the very first thing that Satan used to create chaos in our hearts. And that's food. And food and nutrients are a gift from God. But yet there can be so much turmoil. Why can that person eat that and not this? Or what am I eating? Or what is real? And what is ultra processed? And what is a protein? And why do I need a bunch of it in the morning? You know, and having all these things that we're learning and we're leaning into at different points and different times can be overwhelming. And so one of my favorite things to share and talk about pretty much in every chapter of the book is the ability to have so much freedom when it comes to food. If you understand what it is food, where did it come from? How did we get here? From the Garden of Eden to the Industrial Revolution to here. And so that's one thing that I do is I break that down in the book very simply. It's not over complex in a way that is too much, hopefully. But I want to just say, hey, there are a lot of things that we can lean into and that we can listen to. But if you just go back to like real food and how God gifted us with that, there's so much freedom.
Okay. Since we're talking about food freedom, I have a very personal burning question for you that I want to pause right here. I want to ask you about Ozempic. I want to ask your thoughts on, obviously, Ozempic is a drug that is created for a particular medical problem. And a lot of people are finding a lot of freedom in using it. I will say, as a human, I have had doctors suggest it for me. I have never gone to go ask a doctor, should I be on this? But I've had doctors say, like, because of your blood sugar stuff, you're a great candidate. This would be great for you. But I have just recently started to hear from people who have said that they enjoy Ozempic for quieting food noise and essentially not necessarily being consumed with the thought of food. And even like the other day, I was listening to an interview and a guy said, I thought it was all in people's heads. I took it and I realized I could, walk through the kitchen without grabbing a snack for the first time in my life. As a professional, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, not only like the overuse of it, which I think we can all say is like happening, but also, do you think that that is a helpful tool for people?
100%.
To just turn down the food noise?
I'm going to say 100% with a 50% caveat.
Okay.
And here's why.
I'm ready.
Here's why. So the tool, the mechanism in Ozempic that's helpful is a peptide.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about Ozempic and we talk about peptide therapy, they're the same, but they're different. So peptide therapy is an exceptional tool for people who they've tried everything, it's not working, type of thing.
Yeah.
Or someone who has a blood sugar dysregulation or in a deficit in that regards, but also people who have excess fat in their visceral area. Mm-hmm. That type of fat in particular is the most toxic fat to your whole body. And so sometimes what can happen is you're trying so hard to like fight infections, get rid of toxins and all of that, but your visceral area is just kind of hanging on to its own source of toxins.
Yeah.
So in that regards, peptide therapy can be really, really helpful. There's a very specific peptide. There's a few actually for that area. So using that, getting that particular area, getting that fat off your body can just give you like, I don't know, an up or just like a what's the language? It can just give you an ease to supporting your journey on a way that's not so cyclically hard. And so if you can get the toxins off your body that way, because, the more fat you have, the more it's like you have the toxins, then you have cortisol. It's all like this like cyclical, like
there's too much for your body to do.
Yeah. So you have inflammation. So you're trying to get the inflammation down, to get the cortisol down, to get your blood sugar to be regulated or whatever it is for the person. But what's happening is you're going at it from the root. You're like, you're addressing infections, you're addressing parasites, you're addressing mold, you're addressing candida, like all the things that you need to be also addressing. But it can just be it can be a tool that's just like, hey, let's just do this short term.
Yeah.
Do what we need to. There's also the peptides that are in. So you've got semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide. All of those are peptides that are in things like Ozempic and all the ones that are like medically on the market. The thing that I don't align with in that is they're just going to give you like a 2.5 dose. It's just got all these other ingredients in it that are not as helpful, not as kind to the body.
Okay.
And so they're just going to hand you an injection or do it to yourself. And it's just going to be one dose fits all for every person. But if you are a little bit more thoughtful and intentional and can see, hey, wait a minute, semaglutide, you may not, do well with that, but let's try tirzepatide and let's do like a 0.5 dose and see, because that might only be what your body needs to not have all these side effects.
Okay, Meredith, you're blowing my mind.
And then you don't have to have all the other ingredients from the Ozempic. But I'm fine if someone does want to choose Ozempic because that's what's easy and accessible.
Because that's what's accessible. I'm sorry we're pausing here, but now I am very curious because everything you just described is my body, which I fight candida. I fight multiple infections at all times. I have blood sugar regulation issues, but I've had this thing in my heart and life that's like, I'm not doing it. I want to speak candidly. I feel that way because I feel like for a lot of people, I represent comfort and freedom in a fuller body. But you and I have spoken at length about this, and I've told you, like, I am not concerned about my weight from an aesthetic perspective, but my right knee hurts and I can't run as easily as I used to. And I want to sleep great. So I've had this thing where I'm like, well, I'm not touching Ozempic because I want to represent freedom well for women. And I really do mean that, like, my weight from an aesthetic perspective, it's not an issue for me at this time in my life. I really love my body, but I am very plagued by a lot of the things you just talked about, Yeah. So what you're saying is talking to a doctor about, will you say the name again of the exact thing that isn't Ozempic, but the like?
Oh yeah. The different peptides.
Yeah.
Semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, those are all in the same camp. The most common that you're going to see is semaglutide as an ingredient in Ozempic.
Yeah.
So it's all like when you break it down, and you break it down nutritionally, scientifically, all of that, the GLP-1 receptors, your body needs nutrients, amino acids, all of that. The right kind of probiotic, the right kind of like ecosystem to be able to healthfully produce the GLP-1. And so sometimes just like taking a supplement, like you're going to take an omega supplement because you're not, getting that adequately through your diet, or you're going to, you know, be willing to take minerals that are not, and I'm not saying like you, I'm saying like you could be anybody listening and just a person who, you know, has maybe had these same thoughts, but being willing to take a probiotic or being willing to take minerals and a peptide injection is no different. It's just how it goes in your body, and it's how it's serving your body and what you're doing with it and how you're doing it. It's just like the GLP-1, rather than like taking something like a berberine or an Akkermansia, like probiotic, which are going to be helpful. And sometimes that's all people need.
Yeah.
Because they're, you know, their leptin receptors, their protein and all of that, they're genetically designed a little differently to be able to kind of experiment a little bit differently. And so for some people, it's just like, oh, let's take the Akkermansia, let's take the berberine, let's take...
I've taken both, FYI.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Ad nauseum.
Yeah. And some people just need a little bit more, and it's not something that has to be long-term. Like I think I've told you even before, you know, and Liz and I have talked about, even when you're doing supplements and you're on a protocol, the supplements ebb and flow, they change. You're not going to be on these particular supplements for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I don't think someone who's on the path of choosing peptide therapy as an aid or as a way to fuel and be a part of their healing journey, it doesn't mean that they're going to do that forever if you know what you're doing. And this is where I'm like, okay, I don't advocate, okay, everybody go out and try to figure out how to find semaglutide and tirzepatide.
Yes.
I say that if you want to, please find a practitioner who knows how to support your body while you're on it, so that when you do lose weight and when you do see, you know, infections and inflammation go down, it's going to stay that way because you're doing it very strategically, you know, and anybody that's on a peptide, you got to make sure that you're increasing your muscle because you don't want to lose muscle, you know, so with that weight training, what types of food do you need? Like there's an accompaniment that's really beautiful, and it's its own type of orchestra in your body where if you're doing it right, it can be really freeing.
Wow, Mare, you just blew my mind. I told you before I asked you this, I had a little bit of an agenda and I was willing to be wrong, and I was wrong about what I thought you were going to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
do you want to share, or you don't have to?
Well, it's interesting. I think my mind might be changing as you talk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I actually started my own journey last year with all of this because my mind was changing as I was listening to colleagues, professors, because you hear these things, you have a stereotype, but at the end of the day, if someone is using Ozempic, like, great. Is it working? Are you finding freedom? Are your labs changing?
Right.
Is your blood sugar, is your A1C going down? Is your glucose going down? Like, I don't really care if that's what you choose, you know? Yeah. And that's where in the beginning, I probably had a little bit more reservation and hesitation, just been like, you know, why are you taking the easy way out? And now 100% a year later, I'm like, that's not the easy way out. It's just not the easy way out.
Right.
It's a tool. If you do it correctly, that can be powerful in your healing journey.
I think that's what I'm surprised about my mind changing right now is because if I can process this out loud with you for like 90 seconds, and if it frees anybody up, I mean, number one, I just heard myself say out loud, I have stiff armed any suggestion of this because I want people to think that I'm free, which is like kind of the opposite of freedom. Saying like, I will not take care of my body because of your perception of me. I've had a doctor tell me I should be on this, and I have said no thank you because of somebody else's perception of me.
Yeah.
Number two, I sent a text this week. I mean, I messaged you a little bit, and I was so excited to see you and to start working with you again. And again, for the last, really 1 year, I've been in survival mode, and my priorities have not been my health, but I've been trying to like baseline take care of myself, nutrition wise and moving wise, but it's been just super baseline. But I've gotten sicker and sicker and sicker. I could just cry. I texted our friend Anna about it this week. We were going to go running. We were just going to run 2 miles. I've run a marathon. I've run almost 10 half marathons. We were going to run 2 miles. And I told her, I just feel too sick to run 2 miles. Like, I feel inflamed. I get like infection after infection for the last couple of months. Like, I just feel sick. And I feel so much compassion for my body because I'm just going through it. But all of a sudden, as you're talking, I'm like, why wouldn't I get help? If doctors have said this would actually help you, my honest answer is because of what people would think about me.
Absolutely. I mean,
which is not freedom.
It makes sense though.
You know, that I would stiff arm help because of somebody else's perception of me. I know my heart and I know my soul and I know that I don't care about being a size 2 for a second, you know?
Yeah. Also, to speak into that even more, in addition to that, the peptide therapy route, rather than just like, here's Ozempic, take it. I have been studying peptides for over a year now.
Yeah.
You know, and there are peptides like the ones that we've talked about that can help with overall fat. There's tesamorelin is like there's a few that targeting the midsection, but there's also a peptide for hormone rebalancing,
which I need to talk to you about.
There's a peptide for leaky gut. There's a peptide for joint pain. There's a peptide when you know what you're doing and you work with a practitioner who knows how to dose and can see what your particular situation is and how your body is responding to like 0.5 dose, a 1 dose, a 2, 2.5, all the way up to 12, whatever it is. I mean, you can really, really see that there's not only freedom in that, but peptide therapy isn't just about your weight. It's about your entire healing in your body.
Right.
And I don't know if I want this to be public, but I've been on peptide therapy myself this year, and it's been the most healing experience of my entire life. And I really, really battled for the first time. I've kind of battled some health stuff myself.
Yeah.
But I really, really, really battled after my second baby had a C-section. My body was pumped with tons of antibiotics. Yeah. I almost like blacked out, not flatlined, but like it was a whole horrible situation, which is like, I'm completely at peace with it now. And I've learned a lot, but as a result, my body went like, woo, it was just like in all kinds of ways, not just weight, but like my weight was impacted and my labs, I take labs on myself every few months, like gut labs, blood labs, all the labs every few months. And that was the first time in my life that my labs were like someone I've never met. So I felt really defeated and I just felt like, what am I doing? I'm helping all these people see all of these like results and the success. And, you know, I just literally yesterday had a retest on a client who cleared candida. She cleared parasites. She cleared mold. She cleared streptococcus, staphylococcus, all of these things. And so at the time I was also experiencing that with clients and I was like, nothing is moving for me. What is going on? So I started doing my own research on peptides. I personally wouldn't do Ozempic because of the other ingredients and it's just a standard dose that I don't feel is fair to people. But I can see why it's effective because it does have that ingredient, but you can get the same results just pulling out that ingredient and dosing it to exactly what you need.
I have never heard someone explain the difference between Ozempic and peptide therapy. And I feel like that's going to serve some people.
It's different. Yeah. And when you do learn and you get into that, I in turn like went on my own health journey this whole like year, have been fighting infections, doing a lot of liver support. I did a hormone peptide. And I recommend it once or twice a year for every female who is cycling. Yeah. Because after that, ever since I did that peptide, my cycle has been perfect, literally perfect.
What? Put me on it, Meredith. I need it today.
Like that same month, it was like, you know, what we don't need to talk about what your cycle needs to be on, you know, public, but my cycle was perfect. And it has been for 6 months. And it was just like a week or two of this one peptide.
Wow.
And, you know, my husband and I are experimenting with a leaky gut peptide now that we've done a whole like parasite. We've done we've done a mold, like we've done everything because we lived in mold and on top of the C-section stuff. And now we're repairing and healing using peptides.
Wow.
And it's pretty cool.
Man, you're a freedom bringer today. I feel like you're serving me really, really well. I've just never also heard it unpacked like that. But here's what I would like to say. This is my personal commitment. I've already told you I want to have you back on because now health is a priority for me again. I'm like 6 months out of like pretty intense grief. I feel like my head's above water again. I've told you, like, I would like to be a guinea pig. I would like for us to work on some things. And then I want to just share it on the podcast and say like, okay, this is what I'm trying. I'm very interested in the hormone peptide.
Yes.
I am knee deep in perimenopause, and it is like someone is hitting me with a bag of bricks every day of my life, but also anything that would help my blood sugar issues and the infections. Like I'm just an infection station right now.
Well, and that's where peptide therapy could really, really serve you, because your body, all it's doing is just a cycle and a cycle of trying really hard and being really tired. Yeah. And there's something that it's like, it's coming from somewhere, and it's still important to address the root of where those things are coming from. Yeah. However, alongside of that, not that like peptide therapy is the answer, will fix all your infections, but what it can do is reduce that toxic burden that your body is just cycling, and get some of that out that doesn't need to be there, so that you can stand a chance. Right. Right. Like, so that you can just not be so tired. Because that also fighting infections. We care about around here. It makes you not tired. Being tired. Yeah. That's true.
Okay. Well, wow. More to come on that next episode. Can't wait to talk more. Talk for a second about spiritual nourishment.
Yes. Oh, wow. Okay.
That's the next part of the subtitle. We're back to the subtitle.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. For me and my personal self, and how I reach with how I work with clients, if they choose it, not everybody, it's just everybody's different. But for me, I cannot separate my physical self from my spiritual self. One always impacts the other. Yeah. Yeah. And if you think back on, you're in a season of like strength when it comes to your physical life, and how does that impact your spiritual life? For everybody that does look different, but for me, when I feel strong, when I feel like healing is coming, and that's what I've experienced this year. Yeah. I feel like I'm able to show up. I'm able to pray. I'm able to it's just that communication pathway. Yeah. It's just one affects the other. In turn, when you're in a season of spiritual drought, and you see where that, how that impacts you, or how you experience that season. Yeah. It also impacts your physicality, because it's the spiritual drought, the confusion, it can lead to that anxiety, the depression, the brain fog, all of that. But if you're not fueling physically, or in turn, if you're in a spiritual season of like abundance and excess, and really understanding and walking out the path that God has, that also helps you be motivated to run and take care of yourself. Yeah. So that to me comes from, I can't separate the mind, the body, or the soul from anything that I do. Yeah. Truly, at this point in my life, mainly the work that I do, but anything in my life, I can't separate them. Yeah. And so what I want to communicate in the book, it is like a gut healing plan. There's a plan in it. Here's how we can heal your gut from, the very baseline. Here's where you can start. And everybody can do it. Yeah. And if somebody wants to seek further help, they can do that and get testing and do all of that stuff. But I can't separate where food comes from, the gift that it is, the nutrients that we've talked about, and how learning that. And when you experience a kind of physical healing that you've either never experienced, or it's just fresh and new, I see God more clearly. Come on. And I want that. Yeah. And so that drives me. Yeah. To fix my food in the morning, to put my supplements on the counter, to do all of the things that I need to do that I know that are good for my body, because I know it's like, wow, God, I see you. I hear you. Yeah. I understand. Yeah. And, in the book I talk about, feasting, and how do we enjoy food? Like, how do we enjoy the process of healing? Yeah. How can we be in the deepest, darkest pit of our health and not understanding, struggling with inflammation, struggling with, whatever it is that we're struggling with? Where can we see God and the joy in it? And how can we be still thankful that our bodies are wildly resilient? They operate on reserves from years past. Yeah. So if you're taking care of your body for 3 or 4 years, and you go through a season like you did this year, or like I did also this year, and I have in the past, you can trust that God was so strategic in the way that he created your body, that everything that you did prior to this year is carrying you through. And that is scientific. We can see lab results that, we could probably get your labs and see, you know what, actually, I'm not as in the hole as I thought, or in the red as I thought.
Yeah.
I've had that experience. You know? And so it's just so powerful.
So good. Okay. I love it. And I just confess that I couldn't agree more that I don't think we can separate our bodies from our spirit. I just think like we are a body and we are a soul. Like we just are. There is not, I could go on, like, I know you could too. The theology of it, like our embodied savior actually matters. And there's a lot of people that want to talk about our bodies like they're just like these little like flesh bags that we're going to trash one day. But we don't see that in scripture. Like we do see that every tear is going to be wiped away. We do see the pain and sickness is going to go. But there's a reason why we're made in the image of God, and why Jesus has a body, and he still has a body. He's still embodied. That actually is incredibly important. That after the resurrection and ascension, he still had a body. And then in the new heaven and the new earth, I believe we'll have bodies. It's how we're made. And so it actually does matter. It's not that like we're souls that have a body or bodies that have a soul. Like we are soul and we are body and we are mind and we are spirit. We're all of it. And that's wild, but it matters. So I couldn't agree more that it just all matters. But I just confess that I like, even this question of like, should I do peptide therapy is like not something I've prayed about, which like, wow, interesting. Okay, good. Glad to know. For the last part of your subtitle, I want to talk about the phrase whole body health, but I want to use this as a springboard to my next question, which this I did prep you for, but I have kind of 3 different people in mind. And I want you to talk about, if you are working with them as your client, and what I know they're going to find when they read this book is like, what would be your suggestions or your encouragement for them if they were like, I want whole body health? And I have 3 different people in mind. So my first person is the person who's listening to this podcast who's like, excuse me, what? What are we talking about? Like, they don't read health books. They don't listen to health podcasts. They're not thinking about this. They maybe haven't felt like defeated or sad or scared about it, but like, they're just not thinking about their health. And they're like, actually, I hear you. I'm a soul and a body. This matters. Where do I start if I want to pursue whole body health? So what would you say to that? Somebody who's like a newbie, this hasn't been interesting to them in the past.
Yeah. I think I would, this may be surprising, I would start with developing your why.
That's good.
So if you're coming to the table brand new, you're intrigued rather, I want to know why. Because if you don't know why, then that's going to be a difficult journey.
That's good.
So that's literally as basic as it would get. Just tell me why.
Yeah, just figure out why. So good. And I know that reading your book is going to help them. Like, number one, that's what I love about long form communication. That's what I love about books, because it gives you the time and space to like listen to your own thoughts and listen to your own desires. But also, if somebody's like, I don't have a good reason for why, I know that the book will give it to them. It's going to give them a kingdom minded, grace filled, freedom based answer that might help them. I believe it will. I believe it will. Okay, my second person I'd like you to talk about whole body health with is me. And I would like to fill in the blank about what I mean. So somebody who is, I would say I'm very interested in health. I've been really interested in health. And yet life has like punched me a good bit. I love what you said. Like, hey, if we did your labs, we'd probably find out, we might find out it's like not as bad as you think. And I feel that, like, genuinely, I said this earlier. I texted my friend this week, and I get in these places where my emotional defeat feels very physical. But because of the way my body is, because of what I deal with autoimmune disease and infections, like, also my emotional defeat does often become physical. So like, I just got over like a horrific cold sore that I had on my face for weeks that I couldn't get rid of, or I have this fun, weird thing in my body where in like seasons of really honestly just like fatigue or defeat or pain or trauma, I get infections in my fingers and my toes. I always get infections in my fingers and my toes. Like, and it's so minuscule and nobody would know, but like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and feel like my toe's going to fall off, And that's not to list all the other infections that I've told you about that I struggle with. I don't mind saying on the podcast, everybody, I'm a victim of intense recurrent bladder issues. And like literally nothing will make you feel insane more than having recurrent bladder issues. Like literally, they think that people in I'm sure you've heard this. They think people in the like middle ages that were deemed insane actually probably just had really bad bladder infections. Have you ever heard this?
I have not heard that.
Because it actually makes you feel insane. You feel crazy. And it can make you act crazy too. But anyways, all that being said, what would you say to somebody who's like, I love health things. I love talking about nutrition. I have great seasons of it right now. I've just been beat up by life. Where do I start for whole body health?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't know that there is a one answer because this can look so different. However, first of all, you're okay. That person is okay. If you're listening and that's you, like you're also okay. And I can identify with certain seasons of defeat and health. I have a few colleagues of mine who have been very similarly, walked similar paths and just like, we know what we're doing and we're still coming up against something, right? Yeah. But also just having that desire, it's there. Having the why, it's already there. You've established routine. You've established the goodness over your body. You've established all of these things that are going to lay the foundation for a healthy production of forward movement.
Yeah.
And this is, goes back to the shame-free part of the subtitle is if you have had a season of defeat or a season of like cyclical something or other, or what do I do? Like, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that your body is useless or broken or any of that language that you may be tempted to speak over yourself. It doesn't mean that you've fallen off, or it doesn't mean that you aren't smart enough to figure this out. It doesn't mean it's the opposite. It's actually, you're brilliant. You've laid this foundation. You're extremely wise in seeking this out, and life pummeled you.
Yeah.
And no one can expect that. And I've experienced that this year or last year, even it was last year, I was like, oh my gosh, like I was taken out, not just physically after, something that happened after C-section, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Like there were things in my life where I was like, wow, I feel like life steamrolled me in that moment, realizing we do live in a fallen world.
Yeah.
And God is sovereign. He is loving. He is kind, like knowing all those truths, knowing all of that, and knowing we also live in a fallen world. And it's okay if you can't address every form of trauma that comes at you in your, way in your life, in your face.
Yeah.
At all points, every time of day, whether that's physical, mental, emotional. So it's your physical health. So practically speaking, I would get lab work. I would just talk to someone who knows how to help. Really get lab work, get a baseline for, what you've been through. But as far as like your emotional experience of all of that, like find a way to make peace with that with God and understand like you're still in the driver's seat and you still have a lot of power.
Yeah, that's good.
And no one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
Like you're in your body.
Yeah.
You're living your body.
Yeah.
You're driving it.
Yeah.
So when you feel ready, I think we've talked about that too. Like, not just, not in your situation and not in, just like in general, we talking back at Soul Camp, even just like when people feel ready and when you do feel like, hey, I've gone through all of this stuff physically, you may not always have like the bandwidth to do it, and like making peace with that, but then reaching out, getting a baseline. What do we need to do with your foundation? What do we need to do with your protein, your blood sugar?
And I don't know if anybody needs to hear this, but I'm feeling the invitation to speak this over my own body right now. But I often, again, because in the season I'm in, I'll feel like defeated. And like, I don't know that like I look any different. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel different in my body, but like, I think I might weigh like 2 pounds more than a year ago. I just feel different and I feel sick, and I have experienced like a lot of infections, et cetera, things like that. But I think something I'm feeling the invitation to speak over myself right now that maybe somebody else needs to hear is my body carried me through all that. And there have been 10 days this year, at least in the last 365 days, that I have thought this is the worst day of my life. And my body has kept breathing and my heart has kept beating. And that is victory. It cost me, but I don't know. Maybe somebody needs to say that too. If you've lived through the worst year of your life, I think the enemy would want you to hate your body and feel disconnected from your body, but your body just did that. I've said that even to my mom and sisters about our grief. Like, I've thought back to some of the days when my stepdad died, when he was dying, and like, I said it just to my mom the other day. We had just, this one horrific day in the hospital. And I said, like, I can't believe we all just kept breathing, and then, the days after that only got harder, and then the hits kept coming, but I'm like, I can't believe we all just kept breathing and our hearts kept beating. And I don't know if somebody needs to hear that. You might have lived through the worst year of your life and you might be feeling it in your body, but your body did that. It got through those hard days. Oh. Yeah. Same with like a C-section. Like your body did that,
Yeah.
Somehow. Only people who have had C-sections will know. Also, speaking of not the easy way out,
right.
Like C-sections are not the easy way out. They are trauma.
Like what happens after?
Yeah.
I do want to speak into that a little bit, if I can just speak a little bit of grace for you and you speaking that over yourself and anybody who potentially is listening who is open to receiving and hearing this. But there are neurotransmitters in your gut that hold on to trauma.
Yeah.
So when you experience an emotion that is either unfamiliar or just too much that you can handle, our bodies are constantly scanning for safety.
Yeah.
And so we want to know that we're safe physically. We want to know that we're safe emotionally. And our bodies are constantly 100 million times a day sending those messages via neurotransmitters from our brain that are connected all the way down our GI tract and into our gut. And so when we endure seasons of deep, emotional just wreck and certain types of trauma, little t, big T, whatever that looks like, and we're also up against our body fighting something physically, cyclically, the gut can hang on to some of that as well. So as we begin to nourish our soul. And as we begin to, or not begin, but as we continue to nourish our soul and as you continue to nourish what this season has been, there is a high probability that, yes, you can take the supplements and the diet and the lifestyle and you can do all of the things that, we can, create a custom workup for you to do. But as a natural byproduct of a new season of fresh wind and fresh, whatever that looks like, even if it's not totally like things are better, but just like a new season of here's the next phase of the path. And as your body and your brain and your heart to sense a little bit more safety, those messages get sent to the gut. The inflammation can go down as a result of mentally and emotionally. And then and then lastly with that, God created us from dust we came, to dust we will return. The very thing that fuel our body are minerals in the dust. God created man. He breathed all of that life from the dust of the earth where minerals and nutrients came. And it's just like this wind of nutrients and spirit and fire. Like, here is life and you need it all. You need the minerals and you need the soil and you need the breath of God. You need all of it. I mean, I get so emotional with that because it's just like such a gift. And so the reason that your body carries you through that trauma, the reason why God carried me through what I have experienced is because in the very beginning, when he said, let's go, it's like he created us and gave us what we need. And we're living and breathing that sustainment by God's grace. And it's just, that's how we go.
Wow. I am so glad you said that about dust because I hate when people say like from dust and make it sound dirty. Make it sound like it's nothing.
Absolutely not.
And I'm like, first of all, God made the ground and called it good. So
that's where gardens grow.
Right. It's not like when he says like from dust, you were born, from dust, you'll return. He's not saying like it's dirt. It's nothing. It's not important. Like he made it all and he called it good. Woof. Okay. My last person I'd like you to speak to is the gal who's like, don't feel defeated. Don't feel confused. love health, want to talk about it all the time, thinking about it all the time. It's my favorite thing to do ever. And I have a little bit of an agenda here. I don't mind telling you because I really want you to talk to her about genetic testing.
Oh, okay. So we're all in. This girl's all in.
She's all in. She's so pumped.
Is she intimidated?
No, she's like thrilled. I will also tell you, Meredith, I'm going to confess this to you live on the podcast because I have so many friends that work with you now. Like all my friends work with you. And I was with a friend the other day at the gym and she was like, so, hey, I'm doing genetic testing with Meredith. And I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, Meredith is a genius. She's so smart. I was like, but maybe you don't need this information.
Oh.
Then you sent me a voice memo about the genetic testing. And I was like, say more. I want the genetic testing. I want everybody I know to have the genetic testing.
Yeah.
But I think I hear genetic testing and I hear like, oh, we're just going to find out about this loaded gun that's going to like go off at us one day.
Common.
But when you described it, I was like, this sounds like information is power and the smartest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So I have been doing genetic testing for a couple of years. I went on my own deep dive earlier this year in that as well. Got some deeper training, deeper resources.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, the results that like we're getting and seeing that. Okay. So basically when you do genetic testing, you're not looking for disease. You're not looking to diagnose. You're not looking for something bad, big, or scary. You're looking for how do we get to know your particular DNA. And the testing that I offer has over 500 SNPs of information, of pathways. How does your body react to gluten? Do you need to eat beef? Do you need to eat fish? Based on like what your genes are saying, there are even genes that are connected to peptides, like the need and the use of peptides. And you can pair that together for the most powerful thing. Cause it's when you know that's literally the root as you can get, the root of the root of the root to your body and how God created you. It's a test that you only ever have to do once, but you get all this nutrition information, this hormone information. How does your thyroid genetically operate? Like all of this is what are you genetically predisposed to? And then so as an epigenetic practitioner myself, I take all of that data and use nutrigenomics, which is nutrition genetics, and choose how I want to activate those certain pathways. If that is not serving you well, let's turn it off. So having that power to say, actually, my body doesn't create the precursor to GABA, to dopamine. So no wonder I'm feeling depressed.
Right.
My body actually didn't get that SNP. So then we can supplement accordingly, or the body got the SNP, but it's like less effective, or it's just like the pathway that it is and that it developed isn't optimal.
Right.
And so it's just like this simple tweak of, oh, let's bring in a nutrient for that and probably do that for the rest of your life.
Right.
And instantly your experience of that depression or that low feeling has more potential.
Right.
It's not like a fix. It's not a magic thing. It's not a miracle, but kind of.
But you have the potential to know exactly, or not exactly, but to know what path to fix it.
Exactly.
Like that's wild.
Right. And
so I thought genetic testing was like, just tell me what's going to kill me.
No.
That's why it freaked me out.
We don't look for any of that. We don't even pull that information.
Okay. I want to do the genetic testing.
Let's do it.
I would like to move from person 2 to person 3. I'm in the process of moving from person 2 to person 3 that we described. No, I'm ready. It's time. Okay. It's time. And we are going to do a follow-up episode. I would also like to talk to you about peptide therapy. And then we will be doing a follow-up episode. Well, I will share if and when, but you guys, if I can get my hot flashes to stop, if I could not get knee surgery, and if I could stop getting cold sores on my face, like at this point, I would do almost anything.
Let's go.
And those are the funny symptoms I have. Those are not the serious symptoms I have, because the serious symptoms are not life-giving at all and not worth laughing about. But the hot flashes, let's get rid of those too. Okay.
Or at least mitigate.
At least mitigate.
Some optimal support here.
What I want to say before I have you close this out is, number one, just in any of the places that you find yourself on this journey, if you're like, have no idea, feel pretty defeated, I'm pumped and jazzed and it's all I want to talk about, wherever you find yourself, the Good Food Solution is a life-giving long-form conversation that's going to take you to the next place. And also wherever you find yourself on that scale, you work with people individually, correct? And we'll obviously share all of the links with you guys in the show notes to work with Meredith. Again, most of my friends and family work with her now, and I'm seriously so grateful and so glad. And I'll just say, like, alone, Nick could probably do his whole episode with you, but your support in his mental health crisis was phenomenal and something he massively credits to, like, the fact that he's moving and living in this world right now. And so I'm so grateful for that. To end off, will you just speak to any defeat that any woman in any different area or arena or season of her life might be feeling about her health? Because that's where I feel like you're just such an incredible coach to come in and speak life over just so many different types of defeat.
Yes. If somebody's listening and they're feeling that defeat of whatever it is, I would just encourage you to drown out things that are not serving you. And not be afraid to do that, whether it's voices, whether it's Instagram accounts, whether it's blog posts, whether it's TikTok reels. I don't even know if a reel is on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I should be. But be bold and courageous and willing enough to feel empowered and confident that if you turn off those things, you still know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you still, if you don't know, like, practically, you can reach out and, and that's a whole nother thing, but you have the power and you have what it takes to be in your own driver's seat. If you can just keep your head, I tell my clients, keep your eyes on your own plate and be willing to not care what somebody else is eating or what supplement somebody else is taking. Because I know that it can be really tempting. You're on your own health journey and you see somebody else that's doing something really healthy or really helpful, or you're seeing somebody have the success that you want. So you try their thing and you try this thing, you try that thing. I would just say be willing to drown all of that out and get back to your own why.
Yeah.
And learn your own body, because that's where the power is going to come. And you knowing your own body, knowing what it needs, and knowing how to ebb and flow with seasons of abundance and seasons of trauma, because we're never going to be in one for the rest of our life. But you having that information and the data on yourself gives you that confidence to say, oh, she can do that thing. That's really helpful for her.
Yeah.
Helpful for me. And just being willing to kind of hold that space for yourself. Whatever it is, the source, the area, you're still okay. And seasons ebb and flow, and you're still okay, and you still have what it takes.
So good. Thank you, God. Thank you, Meredith. This episode was life-changing. I can't wait for the follow-up.
Me neither.
God bless you. Friends, I'm so grateful you listened to today's episode. Thanks for spending time with me. It would mean the world to me to connect with you. So you can send me a DM on Instagram at Jess A. Connolly, or head to my website, jessconnolly.com, for more ways to connect. If you have a minute to subscribe and leave a review of the podcast wherever you listen, it would massively help us reach more people with the good news that they can live fully awake. Let's go.